Welcome to Story Players, everyone. This is a podcast where we talk about video games by people who make and play video games. So if you make or play video games, this is for you. And we're talking about just like random topics that we think would be cool to discuss and would be fun for us. So hopefully you enjoy. I am Zachary Snader, and I am joined by my friend, Buddy. Buddy,
Howdy.
what's up, man? Acorn Bringer?
Yep.
What's the best way to intro you? Should I say Buddy Powell? Acorn Bringer?
Why don't we keep it professional? Just call me Gus.
What's the most...
I don't know if anyone knows me by Buddy. Everyone sees my name as Winston. People are going to be very confused by that.
Okay.
That I'm called Winston, but you call me Buddy.
I am joined by Winston Powell, a.k.a. Acorn Bringer.
Yes. I think that's a little better, so no one gets confused who I am.
Got it.
I mean, they're already not seeing me for watchers. Like, my camera just is not cooperating this week.
You do have a picture of an acorn, though, so they'll be able to make the connection, I think.
If you're watching, you can see my little acorn character there.
It's a very, very nice acorn.
Anyway, enough about me. You brought a topic. You brought a topic this week. What do you want to talk about? What do you want to bring to the table?
I did bring a topic. This is another instance where I was like, would this be a good one? Because I don't really know a lot about it.
That's what I'm here
but
for.
I've been thinking about it the whole week, and I haven't thought of anything better. So I figure I might as well.
All right, let's settle for what you.
let's settle for the chaff.
Yeah.
Let's hear it. So my thinking, dude, I have been trying to complete Baldur's Gate for freaking ever.
Dude.
I don't think it's gonna happen in my lifetime now, which I'm really sad about. Like,
I mean, that's the reality.
I would need to retire before I could complete Baldur's Gate 3.
That's the reality of RPGs and being a dad.
Seriously, man, it's so unfortunate. I was so optimistic going into it. So anyway, I say that because my initial topic was going to be about video game completion, which I might bring up at another time, but. Then I was thinking more specifically about Baldur's Gate 3 mechanically again, which I think I've done on almost every one of these shows so far. And it made me think about the relationship system that you have with the other individual characters in your party.
Mm-hmm.
And then that got me thinking about morality systems in games. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, that's a good topic.
Because I feel we're still at a point with games where morality systems have a very difficult time operating in the gray area, which is, I would imagine, almost entirely because of the just inherent challenges to developing.
Yeah, limitations, right? For sure. It's all limitations.
Like having a system be able to interpret something on its own without it being deterministic is such a massive undertaking that I can understand why it is basically impossible for every game that's existed up until now.
Yeah. I mean, the whole mechanic of good and bad, like we saw in Fable and stuff, is totally just like, we want to make a morality system. Like, what can we do with this technology? What can we do with our designers at this point? Like, what can we feasibly do for an actual product that will release soon? And that's good or bad move, and moving a variable in the game. Like, and then that variable determines like what the world looks like, or what your character looks like, or how people react to you and stuff. Like, that's really as clean cut as it gets, and that's as simple as it gets, and that's really what we see. That was like the trendsetter for what we see with morality to this day.
That's the thing, right? Like, even in the limited time that I have spent with Baldur's Gate 3, the like and the dislike reaction from the characters in your party still matches a pattern dependent on meeting the threshold for whatever variable is happening behind the scenes, right? It's like at this interaction point, there are, however many branching paths, and depending on where your relationship, morality, whatever it might be, is at that point, you are going to get one of X amount of outcomes, with X being a finite determined number.
Yeah.
And I feel like, at least in my limited time there, like I didn't feel like the game was really hitting me over the head with that too much, even though it does kind of have the, Asterion dislikes that, or
That's so
Asterion likes
funny.
that, or
That's like
whatever.
the most memeable thing. Your
Right, but it's
follower
like
disliked that.
the Walking Dead Telltale series was doing that
Oh yeah.
over a decade ago, right? Where
Mm.
it's still such a binary thing.
Hmm.
And to some degree, I understand it because it creates accessibility for players who might not understand that there is an underlying system there.
Yeah.
But even if you like load up the character screens for the members of your party, you can see your relationship standing with them
Oh.
on a scale, which I thought was really funny for that game in particular because it's so complex and systems heavy and deep
Hmm.
otherwise, where it's just like, here's this relationship bar. It's like, all right, I, I I mean, yeah, you spent 6 years on the game and you had other priorities. I totally understand. I feel like if Larian wasn't able to make that system into something fresh, they executed on it very well, but the system itself is the same exact design that we've had in Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, the Mass Effect series. Um,
I
then
think
like
where they,
what hope is there for morality systems to have any kind of gray area with the
I
way that
mean,
development currently
to their
works?
credit, to Laren's credit, I think there's probably a lot more that ripples from that quote unquote simple system or fundamental system. Um, in their game, I'm sure, like I haven't played. I played a Laren game before. I played Divinity, right? I played the
Hmm.
second one. I also didn't have enough time to play too much of it. Couldn't get very far. But I imagine, considering how like the impression of people, I imagine the systems are there to like take that input, that simple input. I like that. I didn't like that. This is how much I like the main character. This is how much I dislike the main character, and kind of use it in a more interesting way throughout the game. So having more points of relevance to that value. So like when you go
Right.
to steal something or whatever in a shop or something, the character will react differently as opposed to like a usual game. Like, I don't know. I think Fallout even has that, like where if you steal something in front of a follower, they're going to be like, I didn't like that, or I liked that,
Right.
or something. But
Yeah,
like, I think
they do.
there's more of a
That's
ripple effect in these newer RPGs that we're maybe not as privy to because it's not as obvious. So maybe further on down the line, the character will leave the party or something. Like, I can't even imagine because I'm not very familiar with these RPG type games. But I imagine there's more ripple effect with their systems, their complex systems, than the average game. Even though it is a simple, this person likes you this much, this person dislikes you this much sort of system, which we do
right.
see in a lot of games anyway.
That's the thing. I wonder if maybe all we can really do with the limitations of game development, at least in its current iteration, is like expand the number of ripples that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it will always have a hard ceiling because there will never be an ability for the game world to dynamically react to your decisions in a way where it's meaningful and narratively it makes sense and is of some kind of immersive quality as well,
Hmm.
right?
I
Like in
I
Skyrim, in Skyrim they had stuff like that, but it wasn't very engaging,
yeah.
right? It was just kind of like, and I guess Starfield,
Yeah, the
keeping
Bethesda's
up with the
games, they have
Bethesda example.
a very unique like the NPCs reacting to like saying like, "Hey, friend, you're under arrest," like stuff like
Right,
that. Like,
right.
did you hear about the mud crabs? Get back here, you bastard! Like immediately, like tonal shift with the same NPC.
Right,
Or like they murder
right.
someone, they're like, the blood is so warm. It's like you just killed that guy. I think
Dude,
that's part of it. I think that the ripple effect is where our limitations come into play. Because obviously in reality, the analog is reality, like how relationships in reality are formed and how they affect our living experience. To emulate that in a video game is always going to be the magnum opus, like the most difficult final thing. We are seeing a lot of interesting tools being generated in the way of AI and stuff that I think can give a little bit more of maybe not like actual real in-game consequence, but at least verbal. Like I can see it becoming the AI like learning from your actions in the same way that an AI learns from your sentences. So in a game, like if you do a lot of stealing or something, the verbiage of the NPCs that know about your stealing or are aware of that sort of thing, they have their certain reaction or at least use dialogue that is more relevant to what you've been up to. So I think like as far as the verbiage goes, that's one thing. I think that's in a narrative driven game. That's a pretty important part of it, is just getting the voice actors to say all the different things. And when we are just kind of, I want to say we're coming out of an era where voice acting is the staple. I'm afraid to say this, honestly. I think voice actors, like they've been having it tough for a while anyway. And now with this AI stuff, I think we're going to be seeing an even tougher time with like voice actors having roles in games in lieu of just using AI or something, which I don't think is a great thing. But I think that like that gives a lot more freedom, obviously, to these types of, where there was a limitation with voice actors having to record bespoke dialogue options, bespoke like tonal shifts and stuff for very nuanced, detailed things in the game. An AI can just do it on the fly. Like, oh, we don't need to record this person sounding angry. We can just have the value go up a little bit in the anger, and their voice will just say the line but angrier or something. And I think that's the big limitation with these like friendship meters and these I think that's the limitation, is like the content, the amount of content you need to make for such a variable thing that is a human interaction with another human based off of your personality and your decisions and stuff. Like that's where the ripple, the bigger rims of the extent of the ripple gets kind of broad, like too broad for people to actually do feasibly in a game.
So that makes me wonder if content really is the hard limitation, though, right? Like, yes, to a degree, I totally agree with what you're saying, and it sucks to accept the reality that like human limitation is a core reason that these things maybe aren't as deep as they have the potential to be. But what if it's not just the content, and what if it's the systems kind of falling victim to the idea that we need all this content for a morality system? Like what if the system was reimagined in some way where maybe the variance in the content for one specific path was not as heavy, but the actual impact to the player could be varied in such a way that, a 10 different players could have 10 different experiences where those experiences were almost wildly different. Like might as well have been 10 different narrative games, right?
Yeah. I believe
As opposed to like 10 different dialogue choices that you might get in a modern game like that.
Yeah. I feel like the limitation that we're seeing isn't necessarily a limitation in tech. I think we're seeing trends. I think we're seeing like the end of a kind of a trend of morality systems where like kind of started, like I'm not going to tell you where it started. I'm not that old of a gamer. Maybe there was something like in a DOS game that had the same sort of thing. But like in the Fable games, starting off with that like good, evil like trend, that's easy for a developer to be like, yeah, I get that system. Let's put it into my game the same way. Maybe add a couple little differences here and there, or take that system and do something a little different with it. But in general, still having that same good and bad like morality shift. I think that's a trend that we've been seeing in games since. And it's just because it's like, that's the go-to. That's what you think of. Like for a while, there were dialogue options in games. Like, back in the BioWare those games.
Hmm.
In
Dragon Age.
even in Skyrim, Dragon Age, yeah, like
Yep.
dialogue options were kind of like comprehensible. Like you get it. Like in The Witcher, you say a dialogue option, you get a different response, and that's about it. Or maybe you say something and it causes a little consequence later on, or something like that. And you just don't see it yet.
Yeah.
Like that's another system that doesn't see a lot of evolution because like what's there works to a degree, and people are okay and familiar with it, and it's easy for a developer to take that system and make little tweaks to it. So I think like with the morality system, there's still that trend we understand that's like, okay, I did bad, I'm gonna get bad points, or I did good, I'm gonna get good points. That's easy for a player to understand. That's easy for a developer to understand. And I think at this point, like there totally could be a game that comes out that rethinks that whole system. It's going to require a lot more work, obviously, and it's going to mean the investor of the game is going to have to like kind of trust them, right? Like you can't just pitch a new innovation to an investor and have them like just be on board. So saying like, no, we're going to have a dialogue system just like in The Witcher. Oh, The Witcher did well. Okay, yeah, do it. I'll fund that system. I think an innovation is totally possible. In fact, while you were talking, I was just like, where in games do I see ripples, like actual ripples happen where there's actually gameplay that like, what's the
Right.
word? Like
Things of
that.
consequence as a result of your actions.
Yeah, but I'm thinking like a fundamental game design level. Like if you think of a Mario game, a modern Mario game, you play that game and you have a certain set of things that you can do, right? But as
Hmm.
soon as you put your hat on a dinosaur or something, you suddenly have all those same options, but you're a dinosaur now. So you can do all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same stuff, but as a dinosaur, and the dinosaur gives you different benefits and different weaknesses, or like any character that you put your hat on in that game, or any item in like a Metrovania style game. It gives you have the same gameplay, but now your options have started to ripple, and you get this freedom of expression now. If you take that concept for morality system, where you don't treat it as you got good points, you got bad points, but instead you got this attribute that gives you all these new options,
Yeah.
and then like on top of all the options you already have, if you think of those little boons or like detriments or whatever as new mechanics essentially, I think that way we'd see much more of a ripple, much more of a freedom of expression in those like morality systems. Just like we
Mhm.
see, like it's incredible. Mario games, like it's very few games that aren't just Mario or copying Mario that have this type of mechanic where it's like building off of what's established already in the base mechanics, and it continues to expand, and you just get more and more freedom, more and more options, and you literally get a ripple effect with your actions in game. I think that same ripple effect can happen with your morality in game too, but it's just a system that hasn't been proven yet, right? I think it's totally possible. I don't think it's a limitation of the system. I don't think it's necessarily something that's difficult for a developer to do. It's just not trendy. It's a new idea, and like I don't know, but I think there's something there. Like thinking of it as something more of getting attributes rather than just changing a variable number up and down.
Yeah. I like the idea of a consequence of your actions impacting morality in a way where it changes the gameplay systems of the game,
Mm-hmm.
because that creates an opportunity for emergence in gameplay.
Emergent gameplay. That's what
And
the word I was looking for. It's
yeah,
emergent morality. That's exactly what I was looking
emergent
for.
morality,
Yeah.
dude. I
That's what I
think
was
that's
getting at.
the yes, that is the
Yeah.
next level, I think. Um, but it does make me wonder if it is possible to to get there without AI as well. And AI specifically in the
Mm.
context of an underlying system that is able to understand what is happening in the game world and
Mm-hmm.
being able to dynamically generate content as a result of
Yeah.
those actions.
If
Because
we're just
it
talking
seems like
dialogue,
we've hit the cap of what games can do on their own without that support. And I really hope that's not the case. But maybe it is. Maybe that's the harsh reality that we
honestly,
all need to accept.
I think someone who wants to just do a like wholesale like fluid dialogue morality system, they're going to go for the AI option. Someone like an actual game designer who's doing this emergent morality or whatever the system is,
Mhm.
they have a like a spreadsheet or whatever in front of them that has all the possibilities already laid out for you, and
Right.
they can put the dialogue to that and get actors to do all this stuff. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibilities at all for someone to do something. A truly gifted, um, I don't know, a truly gifted game designer to take that idea and kind of run with it in their own way. They could totally make something like that. Like just like Mario games are being made, they're all genius. Those games, those designers are all genius designers. I think if they took that energy and put it towards, or took that logic and put it towards a morality system, something really very feasible and plausible could come from that. I think with AI stuff, like we talked about AI before, but I think with AI stuff, people who use AI, they're looking for the wholesale bulk, like shotgun tactic to get. It's like it's kind of like procedural generation. People just kind of went ham with it and made their games just huge and boring. And I think AI is people are using it in the same way. Whereas like I think there's application for AI everywhere. But at this point, people are looking for quick fixes and like easy ways to just do everything at once, which is not the
Yeah.
way. That's not the move to make. I think it's totally possible to not rely on AI, use real actors, and get that system kind of working. But at the same time, I'm not a designer, so like when I start to think about emergent gameplay at all, I start feeling dumb. Like my brain starts like finding all these dead ends. So
I
like,
mean, you are a designer. Maybe you're not designing emergent gameplay like
but that's the
that
thing. Like
all
when
the
I look at
time, but
Mario, when I look at the new Mario games, I'm like, that's genius. Like everything you expect to be able to do as Mario, you can do it and then some, and you're surprised all along the way. So like, and maybe even like I don't know, maybe a different example that's maybe not for for a specific set of players. Near Automata, however you want to say it. The combat system in that game is emergent. Like the amount of combat things you can do is emergent. There's so many different mechanics of the combat. Like I played through that game twice already, and I'm starting a new playthrough. I think
oh wow.
last year I started, and
Okay.
and I'm still learning new things about how to do different combinations with the combat mechanics. Like I just found out how to throw myself with my little droid, and I could now access places on the map that I couldn't before. And that was like, it was always there. Those buttons were always there. I was always using those two buttons. I just didn't use them in that sequence for me to do that. And it makes sense the way it works in the combination. So like that's emergent gameplay in combat. We've talked about emergent gameplay in just platforming, whatever. And I think emergent morality systems is totally possible.
I hope so. I think it'd be interesting to see how that could actually come to pass. I just I'm getting tired of morality systems where it's like I'm either this or I'm not.
Yeah.
Just the binary nature of it. And
Yeah.
again, I think if maybe I did go deeper into Baldur's Gate 3, I'd see some of the shades of gray, but
Yeah, I'm curious about that too because I
it
haven't played it either. So maybe I'm just
yeah,
talking out my ass. Maybe there is already this stuff in there.
for sure, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it doesn't, at least early on, it seems like it's going to go the way of, okay, you performed this action. Maybe it's going to be a very deep string of events, but those string of events is going to be quantified already. And like,
Mm-hmm.
you make this decision, it branches into this path, branches into this
Yeah.
path, da 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 da, right?
I've actually
Which is
seen.
infinitely better than than Starfield, which I recently played, where it's
Oh, I
like,
haven't played it.
I Dude, I think just for fun, I like murdered an entire room full of innocent people, right?
And you get
As you
the.
do in Bethesda games.
Mm-hmm.
And my companion was like, "Oh, we need to talk." And
That's
I was like, "All
adorable.
right."
I
And she's like, "Who are you? You should not
don't
be
even know you
doing
anymore.
this." I'm like,
That's
"Okay,
fun.
what are you gonna do about it?" And then she just stays in the party like,
Mm-hmm.
bruh, just leave. If I'm some murdering sycophant, like try to kill me or something then, right? Like go
Yeah.
down in a blaze of glory if that's what you're going to stand up for. But if you're just going to jaunt with me onto the next planet and then we're going to
Just give you
go
lip.
murder all these people together and you're
Yeah.
still going to pull the trigger, like, dude, come on.
You've gone down a
It's
path I
so
cannot
immersion
follow.
breaking. And I think maybe
Yeah.
that's the biggest risk of it is like if it doesn't work, it's so glaringly broken as a system and as an idea that
Mm-hmm.
it like can ruin the game experience.
I honestly feel like Bethesda, like what they say is true. Bethesda gets a pass on that sort of thing. Like I've been playing Bethesda games since Morrowind, and
Mhm.
Oblivion was like where I spent most of my time, I believe. Maybe Skyrim was as far as hours are concerned more, but Oblivion is like where I like that's where I love. Like I love Oblivion. Um, I'm so familiar with the bugs. I'm so familiar with the uncanny like responses from the NPCs and the weird like it's stuff that I adore about the Bethesda make, like what they make. And so for me, like if I played through Starfield, it just gets a chuckle out of me. Like I already know not to
Mhm.
take those games seriously. I already know like that's part of the fun is like putting a million potatoes in a room and watching an NPC just like walk through it like nothing's happening. You know, like or putting things on their heads and stuff, like just doing
It's like
shenanigans.
it's just Gary's mod with the storyline,
Yeah,
basically.
honestly, like, and that doesn't stop me from not being immersed in the world because honestly, the world itself is still immersive. Like, you can still do that, but know that when you go into a tavern, you're gonna see some plates flying across the room or like two
Yeah.
NPCs that are identical talking to each other or whatever. But that's like part of the charm. I don't know. It's just there's something about it for me that I just don't mind. But yeah, like that's totally as far as the morality system is like what they do is just a step below what I imagine is being done in those divinity games, right? Where like
Yeah.
they're actually you can have people leave your party if you're not doing their quest or whatever or something, right? Like
Right. Yeah,
stuff. There's
that's the
actual
wildest part about
consequences.
it.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like they're actually so close together. The execution is what sets them apart,
Mm-hmm.
but systems wise, they're really not that far off.
Yeah.
Um, but
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
emergent morality.
Let's see it happen. You
For
know what I was
sure.
thinking of too when you were talking about this, the graphs of that you see in Divinity.
Mhm.
Um, it's very similar to what I've seen in like graphic novels or visual novels, like Japanese. I don't want to say Japanese, but a visual novel. They're generally Japanese made. They're very popular over there. But a lot of times you'll have a group of characters, usually a bunch of beautiful girls you're trying to like you're the only guy at school and there's all girls school or whatever,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
you're like trying to charm as whoever is your favorite, whatever. So you do see a graph, and in a lot of cases there's a little bit more complexity to the relationships in those
yeah.
games, but I do see those as like kind of a dissection of what we get in RPGs as far as morality, as far as like companions relationships. We see that like you made a move, a dialogue option that they didn't like, your number goes down or whatever. And yeah, so we see it there as well, which I think is
Mm.
it's kind of fun to imagine a little mini visual novel inside these hardcore RPGs.
Ooh, yeah. Now we're talking.
Yeah.
Now we're talking. But
But
yeah,
yeah,
man, that's my topic for the week.
I liked it. Very cool.
All right.
Yeah. Emergent storytelling. Let's get that happening in games.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
I
buddy,
mean,
what do you
I
have
brought a
for us this week?
topic. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe not a great idea for a podcast topic, but at the same time, like my icon isn't even working. Like my camera's not working. So like, why don't we all just try to use our imaginations?
Oh,
Because
okay.
it's a visual thing I'm talking about. All right. So what I've been thinking
Okay.
about, it's not, I haven't been, what I thought about recently, because this new game just came out, right? And it's causing a kerfuffle, right? Because you get this like Asian made game. I think it's Korean actually. And the protagonists are these beautiful like android doll like women with long legs and perfect body and the porcelain doll face and all that stuff. So obviously people are upset. Gamers are angry, right? Just because of obviously it's a representation of females in games. Of course, I'm talking about Stellar Blade. Have you heard of it?
I
Just came out.
believe wasn't it in like Summer Games Fest or something?
It was a
Like I
PlayStation
think it was
thing.
in showcases recently.
Hmm.
Yes.
It's been getting
Stellar
reviews
Blade.
recently.
It's
Yep.
like the post-apocalypse one, right?
It's very cyber
Hang on,
apocalypse
I'm
looking.
just gonna look it up real quick.
It's
I'm just gonna look it up real
androids.
quick.
I'll try to
Yes, yes,
describe the
yes.
look of it.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
You get the idea just based off of the characters. The environments, they look great as well, right? I mean, they're all very well rendered with a lot of dedication because those artists are, they're very talented. The presentation of the game is very flashy. It's very Hollywood. Um, I've only seen the first
The
few minutes of the beginning of the game, or maybe the demo is what I saw. But that's enough to get an idea of what the characters are looking like and what the gameplay is like and stuff.
Yeah.
So
The
what I
cover art
thought,
is very reminiscent of like Bayonetta or something.
yeah,
Like
very
there's
very
enough
Bayonetta.
skin showing where you're like, hey, that lady has skin showing,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, for people who don't know, the character model is essentially a Korean model, um, made 3D with like Bayonetta proportions, so like extra long legs, um, like a bubble butt, but kind of tight, in a bodysuit, a cyber
Yeah.
bodysuit. So basically, not a lot
Like
of
skin tight, like a skin tight bodysuit.
yeah. The curves are all there on display. There's obviously a lot of nuance with these character designs. If you look close, like there's a lot going on with the bodysuit itself, but it's generally just a skin tight bodysuit. Um, Woman with very long ponytail, blunt bangs, that sort of thing, right? Gamers are upset, okay, because obviously, girl in game looking nude is a bad representation of women, right? Like that's bad. But honestly, personally, that's not what I want to talk about. But personally, just to get it out there, I think women have a right to be represented, like be proud of their bodies, be proud of all that sort of thing. And representation in video games doesn't represent all women. It doesn't hold like it doesn't make every woman have to look that way. Everyone's different. Every single person's different. So like when I see a character in a game looking a certain way, I don't care. Like Bayonetta is an example of this very same thing, I believe, happening a few years ago, where for a while people were criticizing the game for being like, wow, way too much skin. But then after a while, women started speaking up and saying like, yeah, I feel empowered playing this game. Like it's saying like, heck yeah, like we've been oppressed for hundreds of years to not be able to show our skin, and I want to dress how I want to dress. I want to show my skin or whatever. So that's not what I have issues with the game at all. Like I don't care. Like I played Nier Automata, for crying out loud. I know that if you hold down both analog sticks, you lose your dress and you can walk around naked essentially.
Oh,
I know all
what the
these
heck?
things. It doesn't
Okay.
bother me. I'm a normal guy.
That's the second thing I know about that game now, besides there's a lady with a blindfold.
No, it's definitely not what you should take with you, because that game is genuinely
Okay.
a great game. Like we could talk about Nier some other time. But what I wanted to talk about is why I still find the character design really bad.
Okay.
Because it is
Cool.
not, it doesn't offend me, but it is bad character design, and I want to talk about why as an artist.
Okay.
Right? Because there's a lot of nuance to character design, and
Speak your truth, buddy.
a lot of it's missing with this character, right? Like I said, Nier Automata, very similar case. You get this beautiful woman, android, robot, perfect. Some Japanese guy sculpted that woman perfectly to his expectations or whatever. But the design of the character is very strong because there's a strong silhouette. It's very identifiable. It's not busy, but it's very like tasteful. The character's outfit in Nier, I think, all the characters. Even to the point where like some of the characters aren't wearing clothes. You're just seeing their animatronic, whatever, android body with
Okay.
because it's essentially a skin tight suit in that case too, right? Where you're just seeing kind of like the technological super face, the what do you call it, the skin or whatever, with the
Right.
the android skin. But that game has a very strong character design because there's a lot of elements to the character that are very visible from the perspective that you see the characters at, which is third person. So if you've ever seen 2B, the main, basically, I would consider her the main character. She's one of the main characters. She has that very distinct kind of poofy shouldered dress with the kind of frilly skirt or whatever. I don't know how to describe clothes, but that gives her a very distinct silhouette, and her haircut as well is very distinct. And on top of that, when she carries her weapons, it's on her back in a specific way. So her silhouette is very strong. You always know what she's doing when she's moving. She's doing a lot of the same things that the main character for Stellar Blade is doing, which is just fighting other robots or whatever they're fighting in that game. Flipping around, doing crazy martial arts with swords and matrix moves and stuff. But where I think Stellar Blade really fails is in the character design. You're looking at it right now, right? I see you making faces.
Dude.
I don't know what you're looking at.
All right, Stellar Blade shocks with revealing costume and fans are going wild. I scrolled down. I'm like, I feel like I should have not safe for work filters on. Like
Uh-oh.
she's
I'm
basically
just on
naked.
I'm just on Google right now looking just at the top results here just to
She's
remember to
she's
remind
basically
myself.
naked. There's like I just googled images for Stellar Blade. There's like multiple articles.
Oh yeah. There's a Kotaku
Yeah,
one right there.
she's pretty much naked in all of.
I mean,
She's basically naked.
if you boil it down, she looks like very similar like proportions to Bayonetta.
Mhm.
But Bayonetta, I feel like, has a pretty strong silhouette as well. There's stuff going on there with Bayonetta that works a little better than what's happening with this character. So that's your impression, right? It's just she looks naked.
I mean, yeah, but I'm on an article right now that says some female characters find power in sexuality
Yeah.
from thegamer.com.
I
And it's
honestly
talking about
think.
like Tifa and
Mm,
yeah, I guess Lollipop Chainsaw apparently had an
mm.
upskirting achievement. If you remember
Yeah,
that game, it's the
that's a very
cheerleaders killing
aware.
zombies.
It's a very aware game, that one there, which is
Okay.
kind of interesting in its own way. Lollipop Chainsaw. Yeah, it has a lot of messaging in it, visual, like metaphor, and probably story wise as well. That's pretty like feminist, I guess. I'm afraid to use that word. I don't know what it means anymore. I'm afraid of
Okay.
it. But very
Sorry, we did get
aware of
detracted a
itself.
little bit. Yeah, I see why. I see why you brought up the whole podcast thing. It's still good that we're talking about this, though. I guess I'm still curious, like what the core of the character design being bad is, though.
Mm.
As someone
Uh,
who is not as familiar as you in these things.
this is an issue I have with a lot of design. Is when there's too much micro detail on the character. I think we have a tendency in this age to get that micro detail in there because we have these 4K TV screens. People are playing on these 4K engines that can run games at high resolutions. And obviously the texture resolution, I'm sure this character has like several 8K textures on her, like so you can get really close and see all the finite detail. Don't really have a big problem with that specifically, but we're talking about a third-person action game, like a fighting game.
Mm-hmm.
When you pull back the camera, I remember watching some gameplay and just being like, man, what is about this game that's not pulling me in? Like, I'm just losing it. Like, the character is, like, invisible to me for some reason. Like, there's so much going on outside of the character. It's so much easier to just forget that the character is even there. And you're just kind of, you just lose the character in the environment because there's so much, like, noisy detail on the character design. There's a lot of like especially up around her neck and her chest, there's a lot of like nouveau detail. Like there's a lot of lacy stuff happening. There's a lot of bracelets and like necklaces and like little details that like, sure, if you get up close with like, I don't know, the camera mode that may or may not be in the game, it probably looks really nice. But when you pull back that picture, you're left with this character that's kind of busy in weird places, like up, where there's a lot of that micro detail. And on top of that, the character is very slim and tall. And so you kind of just get this one single swath of a character presence on the screen. And it doesn't help that she has this long ponytail as well. And a lot of elements of her outfit is long and dangly, So she's got a lot of like ribbons elements to the character. So if you just picture just a single brush stroke on the center of the screen, that's kind of what the silhouette effect is at the end of the day when you're pulled back during gameplay. You get this weird just line of a character. Sure, she's curvaceous as a model is when she's doing certain poses, but during gameplay while you're playing, just running around, it looks stiff. It looks kind of like stick figure-esque, and you lose the value of the screen presence that a nice silhouette gives you at that distance, like Nier Automata has, like 2B has, with her swords, with her interesting dress, with her outfit, to where she becomes invisible, at least to me. Like the character just becomes invisible. And I know it's a classic character design thing to be like, oh, it's got to have an interesting silhouette. And I think that's true in some cases for like, I don't know, when you got to identify a character right away for combat and stuff. But when you're the main character, it's not always necessary. Like Nathan Drake, he doesn't have a silhouette that's maybe his posture is kind of unique. But like if you just have him if he's just a silhouette, like he looks like any other character from that era of video games, but he's still an iconic character. So I'm not saying that's like a necessity, but I'm saying like for this type of game, it's missing out big time by not having that silhouette. I'm not sure, maybe you've ever experienced anything like that, like just playing a game and just kind of losing the character on screen, or like not having any interest in the character.
Yeah, I was trying to think of examples. So I did want to ask you about how you feel all this compares to Bayonetta, but I do want to answer your
Oh yeah,
question
yeah.
here. Uh, when I was a kid, I played the Dynasty Warriors games. Are
Hmm.
you familiar
Oh
with
yeah.
those at all?
Yes.
Okay, so the Dynasty Warriors games, right? Even on PS2, they you could probably have like 30 characters on
Hmm.
screen at once,
Mm.
maybe, right? And that was busy. That was
Hmm.
very busy. But you still had the presence of the character that you were controlling.
Right.
The Looking at just some very basic screenshots of Stellar Blade gameplay, the camera in Dynasty Warriors at least wasn't as pulled back, so you
Hmm.
were a little bit closer to the action. I imagine that had to do with technical limitations more than anything. Um, but your character is very front and center, right?
Hmm.
And the characters have weight, and there's male and female characters that you can play as in that game as well. But in thinking about it, I wouldn't feel like the female character that I was controlling like was just some slender brushstroke on on any given frame. She was
Hmm.
like very much the vehicle that was carrying forward the action. Um, so
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
I'm curious about the context in which Stellar Blade exists in your eyes compared to whether it's Bayonetta or even something else that might have a more direct comparison. Because I'm not like super familiar with that
I
being
guess
a
it's
problem.
like
Dude,
game to.
sorry, I'm so sorry.
No,
Wait,
go ahead.
Ratchet and Clank, right?
Hmm.
Ratchet is small. He's a small, like
Right.
marsupial thing, right? And
Uh-huh.
yet the way in which the player assumes the identity of Ratchet in the world of Ratchet and
Hmm.
Clank, like you're very commanding of
Hmm.
the environment and of the screen and of the action, despite when it does get extremely chaotic. Now, maybe
Right.
that speaks more to the art direction than the character design specifically, but
Yeah, I mean,
Ratchet's small and you could still follow along with the gameplay, right?
totally. Yeah, you're going with a couple different like visual genres, I would say, with Dynasty Warriors, Ratchet and Clank, Bayonetta, and as far as Ratchet and Clank is concerned, it is a totally like a very strong art direction of those games, and they know what they're doing with the character. They know that they're going to have a lot of busy action on the screen, and so they know like. It helps to have the main character be orange, just sitting there orange with those big ears, and
Yeah.
you can. It's just his head is easily identifiable in chaos, because I mean you fight robots in a lot of cases, right? In that game, they're gray or purple. You do fight aliens and stuff as well.
Yeah.
In the
I mean
later games,
that's the thing.
the
There's a lot
environment,
of colorful action on screen,
yeah,
right?
and especially in the
And
later
you're
games,
still
there's
gonna
so much
follow.
vibrancy in the environments in those games. Like
Hmm.
those are as close as we can get to like 3D CGI rendered like graphics, like a
Right.
Pixar movie or something in a game. But yeah, totally. That's a case of character design. He's so distinct in the environment, even though he is so small. I'm sure there's. I'm not super familiar with Ratchet and Clank though. I haven't played too much of it, especially the recent ones. I haven't played any of them. But I imagine there's also the camera you mentioned was very pulled back in Stellar Blade. Ratchet and Clank, the camera's probably centered right on the character. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff, especially with older games. You get a better sense of depth in older games because they have to make the environment like less polygons or less detail.
Hmm.
So for Dynasty Wars, for example, the main characters, that's the main cast. Those are the ancient Chinese like heroes, right?
Hmm.
And they're all made to be super appealing to look at in general. And then the little like chump warriors that you fight, or the soldiers that you fight in the environment, they're usually like down toned in the color and yeah, the action totally just focuses on the character that you play as, and they're usually like I don't know, at least a few heads bigger than the grunt characters that you fight in the game, right? Like
Yeah.
you're usually a
Yeah.
little bit bigger, and that does a lot to like a lot of people might not even notice, like, wow, why am I just a huge person fighting all these little people? But that's something they do to help distinguish the character.
Yeah.
Stellar Blade doesn't seem to do that, in my opinion. Stellar Blade goes for maximum like CG level detail, and enemies that you fight are just as interesting looking as the main character. I would argue more interesting than the main character because there's broader strokes being done for the character design for the enemies than the main character, who has like very fine details that doesn't read very well at a distance, like I've already said. Now, Bayonetta, since you asked about Bayonetta, looking at a picture of her now, first of all, she's awesome. But like she's got the like just seeing her character and what I'm about to say is just like, who the hell thought of this? Obviously, she's just a tall, like curvaceous, slender woman on screen, right? And she even has a long ponytail in some cases. She's all hair, if you think about it. Like her outfit is made of hair. But she's so stylized. Her proportions are absurd. Her legs, in total, including her guns, like create a silhouette where her legs are more than half of her height, right? And
yeah, but I guess she does have leg guns too. So
the leg guns, like she's got a distinctive look. Like when you look at her, she looks like, you know, she's all hair feathers everywhere, and the poses she takes are so dramatic. And I don't know. I mean, I've only played the demo for one of the Bayonetta games, but just seeing pictures of her, like you can tell that's Bayonetta, and she's always got her hips cocked. You know, for being such a slender woman, she's got huge hips, honestly. And I think that does a lot for the silhouette. There's definitely a lot of character design going on here. Like a lot of the things I said about Stellar Blade are true here as well. But I think just considering the age of the character, not her age, but the age of the games that she's in, they can't really do as much finite detail. I think when you get really close to Bayonetta, even in the newer games, you lose a lot of detail. But there's a strength in that. That means that the character has to read really well at a distance, right? And whenever she's doing an animated cutscene or whatever, the focus is on her whole body. It doesn't need to zoom in really that far. I mean, it does, but it doesn't have to. So she's just a very readable character in those games. Just a screen presence that's kind of undeniable. All her outfits have a very distinct like silhouette to them, and I think that's all on purpose. Whereas Stellar Blade, like I'm sure the concept art looked great and everything, but so many like dangly tassels. I keep thinking of a swath down the middle of the screen, just a line down the screen when I think of the character. Whereas like even though Bayonetta is the same kind of like slender, tall woman, she's got stuff that sticks out on the sides. She's got frills that stick out. Her hair points up in some cases. You know, she's always looking different anyway. The stylization also, I think, just goes a long way with this character. Like, it's much more stylized in Bayonetta than in Stellar Blade, even though Stellar Blade looks a little comical, how the woman looks. Like a little too tall. A little too spindly, maybe. I don't want to say anything mean, though, because I believe the character is modeled after an actual person. So I wouldn't
I want to speak to the stylization though,
sure,
because on that point specifically, I think it's interesting that the Stellar Blade developers allowed players to customize the character. Because and can you do that in Bayonetta? Maybe you can do that in Bayonetta. I'm not 100% sure. But if you customize your character to have this basically naked robot lady running around, like how are you just going to be able to visually parse the information that's happening? And then like the dissonance there as well between having this naked robot running around fighting, I don't know, other robots or whatever, and then going into a cutscene where she's trying to be serious about something. Like that's not, what is that?
I feel like
why are you allowing that to happen?
I'm a new entry in the whole like JARPG, like action fighting games. Like if I think about Japanese made games that I've played, these action kind of games, I've only played Final Fantasy 15 and Nier Automata. So I'm a new entry in this like this type of character design, which I thought was awful like before, right? So I feel like even being a new entry, I'm still pretty desensitized to like naked woman android being serious in a cutscene. So like if someone's really familiar
already
with that stuff,
2 games in.
Yeah. I mean, there's no naked women in Final Fantasy. It's all guys in that group. So, I mean, there's that like mechanic woman, Sydney, who's like, I don't know. She's doing something there. She's trying to impress someone with her outfit. But other than that, like the gameplay, there's not a lot of women. But anyway, I imagine like people who are familiar with this type of game, because there's a lot of games like this. fan service games. It's a huge thing, especially with these like anime style games, or these Asian. I don't want to like lump Asian game because there's plenty of Asian developers, Japanese developers, Korean, Chinese, anyone who's made games that I would say look quote unquote Western, right? Like the Resident Evil remakes all look very Western. Of course, they take place in a Western area, but I don't think anyone's gonna be fooled looking at Stellar Blade and think that like, I don't know, even like Ninja Theory or something. Or what was the team who made Ninja Gaiden? Oh no, those are Japanese too,
Wasn't?
right?
Yeah, I think so.
I can't think of
Naughty Dog didn't make Stellar Blade, right?
Yeah. Like there's no like American. They just Westerners, Occidental people just have a different sensibility when it comes to what we find appealing, and we like things a little grosser, a little more, Like I love Kane and Lynch, and that is an ugly ass game, but it is beautiful in its ugliness.
Wow, what a cut!
Kane and Lynch 2 is like one of my favorite games. I have it on Steam.
What the heck? We need to talk more about that.
I'd love to talk about Kane and Lynch. I love that game. But like on the other hand, like I find that I can't say Oriental, can I? That's not good in English. Oriental, Occidental, Asian.
Yeah, I don't think that's like a modern term. I understand the context.
We say it in Portuguese and it's fine. Oriental just means they're from the Orient.
Right.
It's not derogatory at all in Portuguese.
In America, it's generally used with a negative connotation.
Right. It just has to do with, I don't remember. Occidental. I think it has to do with just west. Also means west, and Orient means east in like Germanic or something.
We're getting into things beyond our qualification.
I just think the more people know about the word, the better maybe it can do. Because I think it's an easy way to just say they're from the east, like Oriental.
But you could just say they're from the east.
I use it in Portuguese. It works well, and it's a shame that you can say Occidental in English and not Oriental. Anyway. What was I even talking about?
I have no idea. She started talking about that. I mean, you were talking about Japanese action RPGs.
I was just saying Asian games have a look to them. They have sensibilities, obviously. People
in the same way that Western games do, right?
Yeah, in that same way. Yeah, so like while I'm playing an ugly-ass Kane and Lynch game, running around naked, bloody and naked in Hong Kong, or Beijing. I can't remember where the game takes place. Other people, they want to be a naked, sexy robot, like who's kind of just like impeccable as far as like the look, I guess. Like some people just like that, and that's totally fine. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. While gamers were being angry, the problem I had with the character was the design itself.
Yeah,
and I still do. Like looking at the gameplay, it just you forget the character's there. Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe that's a good thing. But I feel like there should be. I don't know. I feel like you should kind of feel the character while you're playing. Like it should be there.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah, maybe a little more like game art than you can reciprocate on, but maybe
I definitely can't reciprocate on it. But I think the topic holistically is interesting because it's not really something I would have considered otherwise.
Yeah, and you've already got your pre-order or whatever on Steam for the game for Stellar Blade.
Yeah, for sure.
What would your wife do if you walked in playing that?
If she saw me running around with a half-naked robot, she'd be like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like, well, I would question that too. She was walking around with a naked dude robot. But I don't know if it's a good game. It'd be like, oh, look, it's just a naked robot. Like, don't worry about how there's this naked model robot. It's a really good story.
Once you get past that,
you have to play it to understand.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like I don't know anything about the story. Maybe it's on fire, the story. Like I saw the intro of the demo. It looked really, really cool. There was a lot of cool design in the technology and stuff, like the spaceships and the monsters and stuff. I don't want to like not give it a fair shake, especially since I've already played Nier Automata.
You can critique something that you see without having experienced it.
Right. I just wanted to critique the craze that's happening, like people, being upset about it or whatever.
It's very interesting to observe the moment and try to quantify the discussion around it.
I get it all. I get all of it for sure. Like I can see how people are like, it's not like beauty standards are a real thing, and it's not like I don't want to overlook people who have like issues with their own body or like whatever.
Yeah.
But then I also see the other side where it's like, women were oppressed for hundreds of years, thousands of years to not show anything, not be themselves, not do anything like anything like that. And in this modern age, when people can do it, I think it's good. I think it's a good thing overall. The character design might not be so good, but I don't mind the whole theme of it, I guess. But yeah, try Nier Automata. It's great. It's another like 50, 60-hour game you can try.
Never mind.
Man.
Well, cool. Okay, thanks for bringing that to the table, buddy.
Thanks for talking
great.
about it with me.
Yeah.
Very nice. I feel like we did pretty good this round. Good discussions.
We did great this round. Thank you to everyone who listened to this conversation about emergent morality and the character design of model robots in Stellar Blade.
What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments what you think about the character design. If you like it, actually, if you think it's good character design, any of your thoughts. What do you think about our cool idea of the morality stuff? Our game design. Let us know your thoughts, because that's important.
I would be curious to hear what other people think of Stellar Blade's design, just beyond or the character design beyond just reading articles and stuff. So that'd be cool. So I guess where could people find you if they wanted to talk to you about models and such?
I don't necessarily want to talk anymore about it, but if you want to chat
or other things,
you can
maybe
find
about
me at
Acorns or even a Patreon for a video game, perhaps.
Oh yeah. You can find me online at Acorn Bringer. I also have a Patreon that's helping support my game that I'm working on now, Of Love and Eternity. All the money that I use from Patreon is used just to survive, so I can continue working on the game and finish it. Or Acorn Bringer on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr. Remember Tumblr, you guys? Pinterest as well. And what else? Just anywhere, not TikTok yet, I guess. I haven't figured that out yet. YouTube, I have a YouTube channel. All over Acorn Bringer. Just look for me. Right on. What about you? Where can people find your stuff, Zach?
I have more or less stopped using the hell site Nazi landscape that is Twitter. Despite the fact that like there are cool people doing cool things on there still, it's just you got to sort through so much. So not really on Twitter. I'm kind of a LinkedIn person for whatever that's worth. I know.
Yeah, let's all rush to LinkedIn.
throw your tomatoes at the screen now. I'm not super active on social media right now because I'm busy building a game studio. So
that's cool.
If you want to check out wildkind.gg and hit me up about it on LinkedIn, I would love to get your thoughts. And you can find me at Zachary Snader though. And on social media, I'm at Zulu Zach or Zulu Zach QC. That's ZACH for Zach.
You don't have a Twitter at all?
Dude, I could not care less about Twitter right now.
Okay.
At this stage of my life, I just could not give a shit at all. I use it for DMs because other people are posting their art and stuff.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you have it, so people can still get you there. Don't write it off.
All right. Zulu Zach QC.
Okay.
If you want to hit me up on the Twitter.
Very nice.
Thank you all for joining us on this episode of Story Players.
And thank you, Zach.
Thanks, buddy. Until next time.